I was able to use my Seestar S50 and capture the International Space Station transiting the Moon. This video will provide information on how to find out when the International Space Station will be crossing in front of the Moon or the Sun in your area, how to capture it on your Seestar, and then how to process and create a composite image. This is the ISS Transit Finder webpage where you can find where and when the ISS is going to transit the Moon and the Sun. And there's also the ability to look for smaller or additional satellites, but the Seestar is a little too small to be able to detect those. So basically, you can just click Auto Detect, and it'll auto detect your latitude and longitude. And then you can set your time span and the distance from that to get the location and listings of satellite times that the ISS is going to transit the Moon or the Sun. So here we see that there are two transits that are really close. I read online that with the Seestar S50, anything with an angular size under 50 will probably be too small to really see. So this looks like it has a good moon size, large angular size for the International Space Station, and it should be clear sky. So there's a good chance that the ISS will show up using the Seestar. If you click on Show on the map, you can see where the path is, where you need to take an image. And so the tricky part here is going to be finding a place that's right exactly where you need to be to take an image where you're getting most of the moon and the space station is going to be traveling right through it. So, and you also want to make sure you can safely be in the parking lot or some kind of open area. So I was looking here at this place in Culpeper and I noticed that there's a park that is right near the center line. And here you can see it's going to be exactly where the lunar transit center path is going to be. The park ended up being a perfect location. I set up the Seestar and then just waited until the time for the lunar transit. Once you've calibrated the Seestar, select solar system mode and then go to the moon. Once I was tracking on the moon, I just kept the default settings. So I start recording about a minute beforehand and I was able to capture the transit and get the video. Now it's time to create the composite image. So the first step is going to be splitting the video into a bunch of images. So we're going to do that by going into PIPP, Planetary Imaging Preprocessor, and we're going to get a copy of the video that we took and move it over to PIPP. So here we see that we have the MP4 video. It was important to use MP4 and not RAW because MP4 has a standard frame rate where we could get even images across the transit. So definitely use MP4. And here we're just going to click on Solar Lunar Full Disk. And at that point, we go to Input Options. You can leave all of these default. Then go to Processing. Uncheck Convert Color to Monochrome so that it leaves some of the color from the moon into the image. And we are going to also uncheck Enable Cropping so that it can have the full image that we took from the video. Under Quality Options, uncheck Reorder Frames in Quality Order because we're going to want to see all the frames in order. And if it reorders them, we won't be able to see the sequential frames as the ISS goes across the moon. For output options, you're going to want to keep it in TIFF format, and you can select the directory. I'm going to select the lunar transit directory that I have. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start processing. So we have a folder with all the images, and if we see here, we have 3,657 images, and that's just because I took a 2-minute video. This piece is a bit tedious, but basically going through all these images to find where the transit happened. And so you can click on an image about halfway and just start cycling through the images until you find one where the base station starts to cross. And once you do that, you can see the file name, and here we see it. And you can see each frame coming through. It's pretty awesome that we get to see the International Space Station crossing across the moon. We're going to go and track the first frame is 1760. And then the last frame is 1804. So 1760 to 1804. And that's what we'll do to separate it out. So here we can find 1760, and we're going to copy that. I'm going to select all of the ones from 1760 to 1804 and create a new folder. And this will just help us to focus on only those images where the space station was transiting. So here we see a folder of just those images. So at this point, if you were just looking for an image of the space station coming across, I mean, these are pretty amazing. If we even zoom in here, you can see the space station right there. And it's pretty amazing to see that we were able to capture that from the Seestar. But we want to also make a composite image, so that's what we'll do next. So the first application is going to be StarStax. And this is an older application, but it's a good one for just doing kind of a quick trail of the ISS. So if you open up the Lunar Transit folder, and here are our transit images, and we just select them all and drag them into the drag here, you'll see that they show up. And you can actually just go ahead and click Start Processing, and it creates a file where it tracks across. And you can just save that image as I like to save it as a PNG file. We go up to the folder. We have a star trail image. So this is a really awesome tool for being able to just do a quick rendering, make sure you have all the satellites coming across here. What you will notice though is that there's some loss of quality, and the detail around the space station isn't as high as we'd like. So if I go ahead and pull one of the images here, you can see that there's like the panels of the space station. And if we go to the StarStax processing, you can see that you can't see the panels, and it's also a little bit lower quality of an image, right? So if you kind of come back here, you can see a little bit more detail around the moon. So I'm going to want to try something else. So if you just want a quick image and want to process it, I think that the StarStax is a good option for you, and you can get this very quickly, and it's a very nice shot that you can post. But I'm also going to be showing you how to use GIMP to do a little bit of a more advanced option with masking to get more of that detail around the space station. The next way we can do this is by using GIMP to stack the images. So the way that I do this is by going into the transit files and opening up the first image in GIMP. So that's going to show us the first image, and what we need to do now is add the other images to this one. So the way that I did that was by doing Open as Layers and clicking on the second one through the final one. So all of the images that show the space station going across are going to be added to this image as a layer. And this is going to allow us to get everything connected together, but there's still a few things that we need to do to process this. So just so that you can see what it's going to look like ultimately is I've just selected all the layers and I'm going to click lighten only. And this is very similar to what StarStax does. And what you'll see here is that it's not passing through the panels. And so we need to do something other than a lighten or darken layer. And so what we're going to do, and it's a pretty manual process, what we're going to do is do a mask and then mask all of the space station. So it's just the space station that's going to be shown through each of the files. So I'm still learning, but to do that, the way I did it was I made these all invisible, and I'm actually going to probably crop this a little bit just for the sake of time. We see this is the first image. So I'm going to go ahead and crop this. You can see this kind of, or I guess it's going to be, all right. So let's go ahead and crop that. And here we see, this is where we're starting to see the image come through. So anything above this layer we can delete. And then here's where that's the last layer that we have. So anything here we can delete as well. All right. So for each one of these, we're going to create a layer mask and then just select the space station and then kind of rinse and repeat for each layer. So I know this is a manual process, but it's not a difficult one. And once you get into the rhythm of it, you can kind of do it very quickly. So the first thing I do is select all the layers except the first one and say add a layer mask. And we're going to add the white full opacity layer mask. And then we'll do a crop to content. So let's go ahead and increase the size of this. We'll click on pan and we'll scroll to the top. So here, this is the tedious part. We're gonna click on, or this is what I did, click on a feather radius of 10, rounded corners, and I basically make sure it's selected and not just visible. And you're going to you're gonna select this. You do Control I to invert the selection, then click on the paint bucket tool and click anywhere outside of that circle. So what that's going to do is remove all of the other pieces around the image for that layer. And so when both of them are selected, it's going to show the transit line, right? Because it's going to have masked out all the other parts. So you can see that one and then select the next layer, click on the mask, click back on select, just select the space station itself, do Control I, go to the paint bucket and click that, and you'll see that the layer mask has changed. So it's removed all of the other parts that isn't the space station. And then we'll click on the next one, make sure that's there, click on the selection tool, and hit Control I to invert that selection, click on the paint bucket and do the same thing. So now here's this first space station that's in the transit of the moon. I'm going to do the same thing. We see that it's selected around that space station. We click Control I, we go to the paint bucket, we say that, and then we go to the next one. And so let me do a few of these here. Do them all together. Selected the space station, hit Control I, paint. Moon. Now, what you'll see now is the space station is going across the moon, but we're keeping the panels from the space station as it crosses. So I'm going to go ahead and do these other layers very quickly, kind of speed through them, and then I'll show you kind of the end result. So this is the masked space station going across the moon, but we're only using one image of the moon to make sure that we have like a consistent, sharp image. And anything we do to that image, we can not have it impact everything else. So we could also do maybe a quick enhancement, like a sharpening, nothing crazy, but be a little more sharp. Click OK. And so now we can see that the space station with the panels is visible, and we have a sharp image of the moon here. So we can go ahead and we'll save this to our lunar transit, and we'll select PNG. We'll do a quick comparison. So here we have the GIMP lunar transit, and here we have the star lunar transit. So maybe try and make these about the same size, and you can see kind of the difference in the different approaches. So looks like they're about the same. So you can see that with GIMP and masking, we have a little bit more detail. Even the moon looks a little bit more detailed because we were able to do some enhancements. But I think for me, if we're going through this process to get the ISS transiting, I'd like to see as much detail from it as possible. And I think doing it through GIMP is the best way that I've been able to find. So this is a way that I was able to get a composite image of the International Space Station using StarStax, using GIMP. If there's other software out there that can do it, please let me know. And I hope you guys go out and try it. My next goal is to do it with a solar transit and see if we could track it across the sun, which I think would be really cool. And if you have any suggestions or comments, please let me know.